Hey everyone, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. In this case, addressing what to do during rioting and widespread looting. And this is going to be a little bit of a longer video, but I suggest you make the time to watch it whenever you can do so. This is going to be one of those must-watch videos because it's information that may prove valuable to you someday. Maybe if you're lucky enough, you will never see what people in many parts of Argentina are going through right now, but there's always a possibility that you see something at least similar. Even in more developed nations, there's sometimes rioting, looting, even at a smaller scale or even larger, like what happened during Katrina. And even flash mobs. There's always the chance of civil unrest and the possibility of that getting worse. For those that didn't see my previous videos on what happened in Córdoba, where all this started, what happened was that a few days ago, actually, in the province of Córdoba, the cops went on strike demanding better salaries. The governor asked for help to the national government so as to keep things under control. The government, since the governor of Córdoba, the national government, the president, said, well, since he's not of our political affiliation, we're not helping him out. He's not a problem. The province of Córdoba is not a problem of the nation, which is kind of curious because it is part of the nation. But they basically, got back to him in some way by not helping him out and letting the city burn. Eventually, the governor made a deal with the police and somewhat to control things. But what happened was a domino effect where cops in other provinces, pretty much all across the country, realized that, hey, we go on strike and we get wages raised, we get we get better payments. And what also happened was that the population saw, hey, they're rioting in Córdoba and they're not going in jail, they're not getting arrested for it. That looks pretty cool, free stuff. So trying to get back to the governor of Córdoba, they ended up in some way promoting civil unrest all across the country. And that's what's happening right now. In most provinces, there's some amount of looting. It's also even happening in Buenos Aires. So far, 9 dead and countless other injuries, and impossible to calculate the loss in terms of material loss because of all the looting and destruction. And it's not a pretty picture. Now, what is that some people are doing? What is that you can do when this happens? And these are things that people are doing right now in Argentina. These are things that have been done before, back when I lived there, when there was always some amount of civil unrest here and there, especially in summer. It seems that weather makes people even worse. And so, getting right to it, just keep this in mind. This may be very useful one day. First of all, arm yourself. Pretty self-explanatory, pretty obvious. If there's someone trying to break in wherever it is that you are, you need something to defend yourself, right? And by this, it's having a firearm. Right now, you see people in Argentina, neighbors organizing and using sticks, knives, anything they have. At least a shotgun, a double-barrel shotgun, if that's all you have. But you need to have a firearm. When someone is trying to break into your house, the only thing that's going to be keeping you safe is actually having a weapon. What kind of firearm? Some firearm is always better than none. So if you have a single-barrel shotgun, it's better than nothing. If you have a double-barrel shotgun, it's better than a single-barrel shotgun. If you can actually choose, big bore semi-automatic. That's my recommendation. Big bore, as in at least a 9mm semi-automatic handgun or bigger, or even better for home defense. In that scenario where you may end up organizing with neighbors, having a semi-automatic carbine, big bore carbine or rifle in semi-automatic as well. That's going to be giving you a little bit of an edge. There's been several incidents right now. One that happened just a couple days ago I think it was in Mar del Plata. During the recent lootings, a couple of armed men broke into a house. They took control of the couple. The couple were, I don't know if they tied them down. The son had access to a 9mm, shot one of the of the home invaders who got killed, the other one escaped. At least having a weapon may save your life. It's obvious enough. We've talked about this quite a bit. But if you get the choice, having, as I've always recommended, a basic battery, having a semi-automatic pistol, a Glock 9mm 40, whatever caliber you want, but something good, reliable, and a semi-automatic rifle. Those two would be giving you quite a bit of an edge. And it's not just about firearms. And especially in this case, having body armor, which is something that I did cover in our videos as well, would be very valuable. It's and you're going to be seeing that later on, but it's not just about the gun, it's about having protection from the firearms of the looters themselves that they're going to be using, because sometimes they go unarmed, sometimes, especially when they're going into privately owned residences, most likely they're going to be doing that armed. They're going to be doing that with firearms. So if it's childish to think you're going to be the only one doing the shooting and not get shot in return. Gun, body armor as well, a good flashlight, stuff we've always talked about to some degree, even EDC flashlights, which I've talked about ad nauseum. The importance of having something very bright that has a tactical application as well, besides a low mode that is more handy for everyday tasks, having the higher output for when it's a tactical application that you need. Those are things that would be very valuable, very useful in this situation. All right. And what else? Of course, point number two, get the training to go along with it. Just owning stuff doesn't make you competent on their use, okay? And this is especially true in terms of firearm. Owning a car doesn't mean you know how to drive it. You have to learn how to drive it besides owning it. Owning a handgun doesn't mean you're capable and proficient with it in more trying circumstances. Widespread looting and rioting would be a trying circumstance. Sometimes people get away with being less capable. Sometimes someone has a 22 long rifle Derringer pistol, doesn't even know how to use it. He just picks it up as someone tries to break in. They see that you have that little 22 pistol single shot, and they just turn and leave. That's a possibility. It's also a possibility that whoever is trying to break in is also armed. It's also a possibility that he's more determined than just your average criminal and actually engages. And that's where things start getting hard, start getting more complicated, more challenging. That's where it's going to be coming into play what kind of firearm you have, what kind of training you have. And if you're lacking in both, the less chance you have of getting through it. Okay, so just owning a gun doesn't make you competent in its use. When you have this type of situation, you want to be competent. And I can give you a perfect example of this, which happened again just a couple days ago during these widespread looting and rioting in Argentina. A Chinese store owner, you remember those Chinese store owners and Korean store owners in what was it, in LA during the Rodney King rioting, that they took their roofs with their AKs and protected their business and such? Well, this Chinese store owner wasn't as tactically mindful. He shot a couple of warning shots, or shot a couple of the looters, but he did it from the inside. He didn't understand the tactical advantage of being in a higher position and away from immediate contact from the mass. He did things wrong. He didn't understand exactly how to use that firearm of his, what tactic to employ along with it. He was clearly on his own. He didn't have anyone backing him up. So the kind of training you have is going to be coming into play when things turn ugly, you know. Yeah, sure, there's thousands of stories of untrained people that the gun saves them. There's just as many stories of people that lacked the training and ended up getting killed, ended up shooting someone they were not supposed to during complicated altercations. Maybe they thought someone broke in and it was just a family member. The lack of training, it's a very bad idea. It's just as trying to drive a car without knowing how to do that. It's about that same level. So get the training on how to use your firearm. If you have a handgun, get training on using your handgun. If you have a rifle, get rifle defensive shooting training as well. It is all available. Folks, you guys in US, you are blessed with several opportunities. If you do a little bit of online research, you will find a good instructor nearby. Some are better than others, that's pretty much granted. But in general, if you find someone with a good reputation, you will be light years ahead of those that do not have that training. Remember, train as you would be fighting, with the guns you would be using in the fight, with the gear you would be using in it as well. All right. Not only that, also have training on what to do in case you get shot yourself. Basic first aid is very valuable, would be your first step, but also what you do when you get shot. There's certain procedures, there's things to do depending on if it's a limb, if it's a torso shot, if it's a depending on where you got hit. That's all things that you can actually train, you can actually somewhat prepare for it. Even if you're not a medical expert, having some basic gear on from tourniquets to Celox gauze, or there's certain things you can do that may save your life. I know people that bled to death because they didn't know what to do. They didn't have the equipment and the know-how required. Before leaving Argentina, actually, I knew of a fellow shooter that was a member in my gun club. During a home invasion attempt, typical situation, he drove back home, he was entering his house, he got shot, I think it was even in the leg, but the femoral artery got hit, he bled to death without any way of stopping that. Could there have been something he could have done? You know, at the very least, if he had Celox gauze on him and he knew how to use it, which is not hard at all. If you have, even just watching a few of the company's own videos on YouTube, you have a good idea of how to pack a wound with it. Maybe he had a chance. It is 100% sure. Nothing in life is 100% sure. But I will tell you what, he should have had a much better chance than just bleeding to death there in the sidewalk. So get the training. It's not just about this. It's not just about owning the gun. And also here in training as well, I will throw in the mindset of how to have a house that is easier to protect. Not all houses are alike. Some are harder to break into, some are easier. If you have, and this goes down to even leaving doors and windows open, or having solid doors so as to make it harder for criminals to break in. So many people just leave their doors open. It's the kind of thing that you will be better off if you apply this during the good times as well. If you apply common sense home security rules during the good times, it's not going to be as hard to keep up with them when things start getting a little bit more ugly. You don't need an official, it's gone widespread rioting and looting to get busy with this. Point number 3, organize. Get to know your neighbors. Guys, all things that we've talked about many times, all things that people in Argentina are using right now as I'm speaking, as they're dealing with rioting and looting pretty much across the country in different points. Organizing. Neighbors are organizing, are finding ways of defending themselves. Sometimes you see the images and it's quite pitiful seeing that many of them just have sticks. They don't even have a gun. They don't have any training. They just have sticks, but they have the will. The will, it's a key element. They have the will to protect their neighborhood. So if they build barricades on the streets and they are organizing so as to protect their own communities. Building a barricade, organizing with your neighbors, communicated. This is not a long-term solution for crime, because eventually people have to go back to work. People have to carry on with their lives. But this is not permanent, all right? We're talking reality, folks, here. We're not talking, novel fiction, literature and such. This is real stuff right now. A permanent situation of anarchy, it's not, you would be talking then about civil war, right? Like you see in some parts of Syria right now. That's a different story. Rioting and looting does not last forever. Eventually order is restored, but you have to stay protected during the meantime. You have to keep your head down, stay safe until things are back to normal, or at least a little bit more normal. One of the advantages, especially in US and Europe as well, in some places, the subdivisions, which are something you don't see as much in South America. It's more like gated communities, private neighborhoods, which would be actually a great place to be right now, and given what's happening, since it's already organized with security in mind from the go, from the moment the neighborhood itself was planned in its layout. The streets were designed in such a way. But even in some of the subdivisions you see in US and other parts, there's usually a couple of access, or maybe just one access, and a subdivision is a little bit easier to secure than your average grid layout of streets like most guys right now have in Argentina. In that case, it's much more difficult. Neighbors from a block have to organize and just build barricades in the street corners, closing those streets, which makes quite a bit of chaos. In a subdivision, instead, you could just build a couple of barricades, somewhat control the access, even though I will say most subdivisions in US are not designed as a private or gated community in Argentina with security implemented in the design from the go. So you still have to find ways of securing all these other possible entry points, which it's not taking into account. But at least you can secure those entrances, and at least you can, with vehicles approaching, if someone doesn't actually live there during a time like this, then you would have a good idea that if they don't live there, maybe they have no reason being around there either. So that would be something helpful. But again, the key here is organizing with your neighbors, and the time of talking to your neighbors, planning things, and at least touching bases on where they stand, at least knowing their first name. Guys, how many of you don't even talk to the guy that lives across the street? You don't even know his last name. Okay, the time is right now. The time of breaking the ice is right now. Don't wait until you both look at each other and say, hey, looters are heading our way, we have to do something, let's build a barricade. Hi, hello, my name is Bob. No, don't wait until that moment. Right now. And the better relationship you have with the people in your street and your block, the better things are going to be turning out when this happens. We're seeing it right now. Lots of videos in YouTube of what's happening in Argentina. The neighbors have organized, building barricades, taking up security. In many cases, the cops themselves have been understanding of this. There's no right to carry firearms in Argentina. It's the license to carry is very rare. Most people do not have anything like that. But given circumstances, most people are openly carrying their guns in these posts they've made, and police have been understanding so far. Is it a permanent situation? Not at all. If you did this just a few days ago, you would have been arrested. If you do this next week, probably you'll get arrested as well. But at least having the gun with you, it's something that you cannot improvise when this happens, when it gets to this point. You have to own it now. Then you will see if you have the possibility of carrying, if your local cops are even working, because in many places of Argentina right now, they are on strike. They're not even on the streets. So it's basically anarchy and everyone doing whatever they want. If order is somewhat restored, but you feel that you still want to have a gun, but cops are not allowing that happening, and you risk getting arrested, then having the handgun that I've talked about so many times would still allow you to conceal it and go around doing your business, but not having that weapon as obviously displayed. It's gonna be complicated if you don't have actually the right to carry, like it's in most cases in Argentina. But at least you will have the possibility of making an adult choice, given the circumstances, understanding the consequences of your actions. At least you have choices. If you don't have it to begin with, you don't even have a choice. All right, folks? And this goes back as well to the handgun, even though it's not as as good as a long arm, it is concealable, and that is a key factor. Hopefully, ideally, a basic battery, as I said in point number 1, a handgun, semi-automatic rifle. If not, a handgun and a shotgun, or even a 3-2 long rifle. At least you will have something. Following up, stocking up on supplies. This is not the moment to realize you've run out of milk and your kid is going hungry. We've covered this many times for so many reasons. This could be because of you losing your job and needing a cushion so as to get back on your feet, or it could be rioting and looting. This is not the time to go around doing shopping. All right, these are the things you should already have in place. Food, basic medical supplies, the stuff you use around your household all day long in just normal basis as your daily routine. Have those have a good amount of supplies in place so that you don't have to go around looking for stuff, buying stuff when everyone is looting and the city is pretty much chaotic. Finally, stay put. And this is a pretty big piece of advice, because if you read some of the more common fiction, works of fiction in the survival literature, everyone immediately assumes, oh, the cities are burning, we have to bug out to our survival homestead and build our survivalist group, blah blah blah. Yeah, it works in novels. It does not work in the real world. It's actually the opposite. You have to stay put. You're much more likely to get into trouble, to get hurt, to get involved in violent altercations if you hit the streets and start moving around when the city is going nuts. Even in a vehicle, I mean, we're already talking about people building roadblocks. There's already the looters out there doing their thing. There's already criminals taking advantage of the general chaos so as to attack people as well. Is there a chance of someone trying to break into your house? Of course there is. As it always is in every single day. There's always a chance, and especially so when a city is submerged in chaos. But having said that, if you stay put, you have a house that has basic security, you have a firearm, you make it obvious that your house there's people inside and there's armed people inside. Someone trying to break into your house, you put a couple of rounds through a window, through a door, there's a good chance they will not continue with their attack, because no one wants to get shot. Especially in a city that's complete anarchy and there's plenty of looting to go for around. Why risk getting shot? Why try to break into a house with someone shooting from the inside when you can just go looking for another place? Now, this is different from what happened to the Chinese store owner. A grocery store is a favorite target during rioting, during looting. All right, the guy should not have placed himself inside the store, caging himself so as to be burned down like a rat, like it actually happened to him. He started shooting, the looters left, but they torched the place with him inside. Poor tragedy. You need to have ways of exiting that place. But in a house, in a private residence, it's extremely unlikely that someone will try to continue to break in when you're on the inside shooting from the inside, from a secure position. Okay, of course, everything can happen, and it is a highly dangerous scenario. But in general, that's how things work. If there's anarchy on the streets, stay put, because there's much more. The chances of you getting hurt when hitting the street is much greater than if you stay put. Of all the people that stayed in their homes, I can think of everyone that got, I think, one gentleman, 85-year-old man, he stayed in his house. I suppose he didn't have a weapon. He got killed during a home invasion. I think it was in Cordoba during these last few days of looting and trouble. But other than that, millions of other people that stayed put in their house were actually safe, and much safer than actually going on the street. And guys, you know, I hope it's not my average viewer, but don't go around looting either. If you think that it's a good idea to do that, if you think that, well, I'm going to be taking advantage of this and getting back to Big Brother and big corporations by going out looting and such, you're not only doing something that is immoral, you're not only doing something that's criminal, you're doing something that's very dangerous. Most of the people that are getting hurt and most of those that got killed were in fact looters. Especially when you consider the looter normal person ratio. I think that was at least, it was a cop, a couple of innocent people, but almost half of the men, of the people that got killed, of the 9 people that got killed so far, and I'm sure it's the same thing for those injured, most of them were looters. They were doing something they were not supposed to. A store owner shot them. A couple of them have actually killed each other fighting over loot. One gentleman was stabbed by another looter when fighting over what they were stealing. It is a pretty bad idea. You know, you're much better off if you work hard and actually buy stuff rather than going around looting. But yeah, in general, there still hasn't been military law, emergency law declared or anything like that. There's no state of siege. You know, habeas corpus hasn't been suspended like it happened in 2001 during the economic collapse. It hasn't reached that point, but having gone through that, which would have lasted for a bit more time, it gets actually very boring staying put, staying in your house. You're not allowed to go out. It's not even safe to do so. So find ways of staying entertained. You know, hey, you still have electricity. You can watch TV. You can keep up with the news. Stay informed. Again, that's part of staying organized. You need information. You need to know what's happening out there. So stay informed, watching TV, hearing local news. If you have a police scanner, that's also going to be giving you more information. Although, having done that myself, it can drive you nuts because there's so much information going back and forth. Maybe just watching the local news, it's a way of filtering some of what's happening and having a clear picture of what to do. It can be pretty boring. I mean, if violence becomes common, there's a good chance that most of your days will be staying home, watching TV, eating pizza, or playing video games. Hey, I've mentioned in a previous post in my blog having an Xbox to play a game every now and then between watching the news. At least you get distracted. At least you do something else, and you don't drive yourself nuts worrying about what's happening. But yeah, you have to stay informed nonetheless. Organizing, having a firearm, having the training, the supplies has to bug in and stay in place, and don't go out there looking for trouble. Guys, that's my advice so far, and try keeping all this in mind. Take care, have a great day. Remember to subscribe, folks, because I really do appreciate that. See you on our next video.